right, well, hello everybody, and welcome. This is BRK102. This is the session on agents and multi-agents, and we are going to have some fun here today. And I want to start it with this. Now, there is somebody who showed me the very first, by the way, I'm 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗿𝗀𝗃 Casalaina. I'm VP Products of Azure AI and AI Futurist. Yeah, that's who I am. But anyway, even more important, there is somebody who showed me the very first feasible multi-agent system I ever saw. The first production multi-agent system that I ever saw. Somebody who is very, very advanced when it comes to agents. He's from Thermo Fisher, and I call him the OG of AI agents. I'd like to welcome Lambert Ninteman. Lambert, come on up. All right, welcome.
Thank you. All right, good to be here.
Lambert, so what is your title? What do you do at Thermo Fisher?
That is a great question. I think my title changes quarterly, but right now it's a global lead of democratization and enablement for AI automation and data.
Man, that is a mouthful.
It is. It's kind of a mouthful. I think OG of agents fits a little bit better on the tag.
All right, the OG of agents. That's what you should call yourself on your LinkedIn profile. Now, speaking of which, though, what we have playing on the screens right here is your actual agent running. So what does it do? What did you build this thing for?
First off, so this is some vintage 2023 right here. It's actually about a year ago right now that we put this guy together. And the problem that we were trying to solve, it's two parts, right? So part one is, just imagine any large organization, right? You've got tons of data, it's all over the place, and you have business teams and you have leadership who need to be able to ask complex questions of their data. Well, to do so, you probably got to contact IT and submit a ticket and wait for that to happen. It probably takes about a week or two, and then somebody in IT is going to spin that up into a SQL query and hit your data and prepare a spreadsheet, send it back to you, and then at that point, you got to figure out what they sent. So that can be very time-consuming and challenging to understand what's actually happening with all that. So the first thing that we thought was, well, why don't we leverage some of the natural capabilities of large language models, specifically around translation, right? And here we're translating natural language queries into SQL queries, which brings us to part two. What do you do when you have multiple disparate data sources that you need to integrate and reason over the whole set? So that's why we went with a multi-agent system. And what you see here is AutoGen 0.2 with a bunch of other Azure stuff like Azure AI Search and Cosmos DB, and it's all connected up to some other cool data sources.
All right, so now you did choose a multi-agent system. Why couldn't you have done this with a single agent?
Interesting question. I feel like the multi-agent system chose us. Couldn't do it with a single agent because we didn't want to naively drop a whole boatload of prompts into a single agent. We thought if we broke this apart and then had specialized agents that each had a piece of the problem, we'd get to a much more effective solution and much more quickly, right? So rather than 2 weeks, we got it down to 5, 6, 7 minutes. One of the funniest things on this one was one of our early runs took 7 minutes to run. We're like, what's taking it so long? Right. And it turned out when we ran through all the output at the end, 6 minutes was the quality agent and the SQL agent arguing with each other over what the query should be. And it didn't run it until they agreed. And they're like, OK, this is good. Send it. So 1 minute was all the rest of it. 6 minutes was just quality checking the actual input before it went out.
Right, and when you first showed that to me, and remember, when you showed it to me the first time, it took 9 minutes to run.
Yeah, exactly. That's that quality agent. It's a stickler.
Right, and we have a word for that now, or a term for it anyway. We call it a maker-checker pattern now. So that's a very common use case of multi-agents, in fact. Although, like I said, you were the first one that I ever saw to actually do it before we had a term for it. Now, I think on the next slide we have a kind of a basic architecture diagram for this, but how does this thing work? I mean, how did you set this thing up?
Yeah, so we set it up so you got your user proxy, right? That's the only agent that actually has the power, if you will, to do anything, like send queries to other systems or execute code or anything on behalf of the user. We had a SQL agent that would actually, we gave it our data ontology and it knew the schema and it was able to write the queries that we needed. We had a quality engineer that was able to then check, it had all the same information and it would check whatever the SQL agent proposed in order to make sure that that was good. And then, of course, we had an analyst that would then take all the results from our data systems and then reason over them with its business knowledge that we baked into it, which, by the way, is another great place that you could use your Azure AI Search, because you could put your business knowledge into a search index, right? And then RAG that in to that agent. So you can see using one agent really isn't feasible for this, but using a multi-agent system is totally the way to go. So I think there's 5 agents in this particular setup, although we do have some that were later after this that have up to 1,000 agents at a single multi-agent system.
1,000 agents, man, that is crazy. But okay, so when you're talking about whether it's 5 or 1,000, how do you test this stuff, man? I mean, how do you evaluate each individual agent? How do you evaluate them, how they interact? How does this even work?
Yep. So, initially, it was a lot of manual checking. So we got subject matter experts from each domain that was related to the problem and had them go through and manually check all those outputs. So we had that initial expert level subjective check. And as we move forward into integrating this into our standard IT processes, like CI/CD and validation, all that stuff, well, now we're also taking those quality agents and validation agents, making them more robust, and also identifying interpretable metrics that we can then use to understand empirically what's happening inside the system, and combine that with our existing manual checks to keep that human in the loop, right? And have an objective and subjective perspective on the actual quality of the output. So that's the direction we're going, and then ultimately bring all of this in line with our standard IT practices.
So I mean, there's kind of bulk evaluation, right? So like as part of your CI/CD, you run this like it's unit tests, I guess. What about ongoing monitoring? I mean, do you do any kind of monitoring of the system in real time when people are using it?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. We always have ongoing human monitoring of the systems. And of course, as I said, as you move forward, you figure out more and more ways to integrate some interpretability into the system, right? And of course, as the technology changes, more of those tools become available. So that's actually one of the great things about Ignite. We're seeing more stuff that's available that are going to support us on our multi-agent journey.
Yeah. So let's see, and I think we have another slide of, I don't really know what's on the next slide, actually, but okay. Well, I guess this is what you were talking about, right? This is the end. I was supposed to do this. I was supposed to click this thing, and I didn't do it. But you talked through it.
Yeah,
it's all good. But okay, you brought these things to production now. I mean, you have, I don't even know how many agents you have in production now. Last time we talked, it was hundreds. Now it's thousands, apparently. What are the challenges that you face? What did you face, and what are you continuing to face in bringing these things to production?
Yeah, so that's the really interesting thing here is, in the end, it's not a technology problem. It's about people, policy, and process. You have to have that figured out first before you can then address the technology problem. So build out your internal RAI framework. Build out your Gen AI processes and policies so that when it comes time to actually build any of these systems, you have a framework to pour the technology into, like a mold. Right? And all of it, and throughout all of this, you're going to find that you're going to have people who are challenging every aspect of this, and you have to help educate, right? Help them to understand this isn't coming for your jobs, it's only going to make you better at your job, right? We're going to augment the power of each person, right, in the organization. So this is all about understanding how we can do more with our data and understand more deeply the things that we do so we can be better as an organization. Right? And then with policy, if you have effective policies in place and you have compliance with security and quality and regulatory processes, then you can integrate these into applications that would have otherwise been unthinkable. Right? We're always concerned about hallucinations and confounding and things like that. Well, you need to understand and to educate on how these things work so you can mitigate or eliminate them and integrate that into your process.
So now, I talked to your boss, as you may remember. You were not there at the time. But I talked to your boss, and Thermo Fisher is an old school company. I mean, Thermo Fisher was founded, if I'm not mistaken, in like 1904?
1902, yep.
1902. So it's an old school company, and they're kind of conservative. I mean, you were talking about, regulatory policy, compliance, and stuff like that. How do you educate them? I mean, do you not face a ton of skepticism in your organization?
Yep, well, this is where I'd like to do a shout out to our Gen AI Center of Excellence, and especially the innovation vertical. So Mike and Trevor and Barath and Greg and Brian, you guys are all watching, and 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗃, the man, the myth, the legend, should be out here in the audience, right, from our team. And our team is actively engaging the entire company across verticals, across regions, every aspect of the organization to ensure that we have Gen AI training from the ground up. We actually have certification programs in place where every single person in the organization is getting certified on prompting, certified on agents, right? We have 130,000 folks in the organization, and people already have certifications on agents. right? So this is really rad stuff. So the key thing is everyone here, you would be the information radiators, the evangelists in your organization, sharing out that knowledge and baking in that depth of understanding, not only with what Gen AI is, but with your own internal policies and practices so that you can bring it all together and truly initiate transformation.
Yeah, which you have indeed done, and I've seen it myself. It's something else, man.
Well,
so, Lambert, anything else to say?
Just that the future is exciting. If you think AutoGen 0.2 is cool to look at, just wait till you guys see what's coming next.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right. So, I guess according to the slide, so Mads, come on up. I'd like to introduce our GPM of agents, Mads Bolaris, and our evidently out of order slide.
Ah, that's okay. We'll just jump back real quick.
All right, cool.
So you saw how AutoGen is this really amazing thing that allows agents to work together. But I wanted to drill into the individual agents. So what we at Microsoft and OpenAI have provided for a while now, it's been almost a year, is something called the Assistance API. And it's kind of this thing that lives in the cloud that lets you manage at scale agents, or what used to be called assistants. You can manage the instructions, the tools they have, the life cycle that is available for them to actually perform actions for you. And my favorite part about the Assistance API are built-in out-of-the-box tools, like file search. It's basically a really good implementation of RAG. Like if you need a RAG like that, just throw some files at Assistance API, and it does a pretty decent job. And then Code Interpreter, which I'm actually going to pass it off to Rob real quick.
Yeah.
Marco, real quick. Sorry.
Man, we're discombobulated.
I know, I'm so
All
sorry.
right. Now, I will tell you, there's a reason why I am not a slide person. So I cannot figure out the slide clicker thing at all. But this I can do. So now I'm showing on my screen now, I am going to build a basic assistant, and this is what it looks like right now. So we're in the Azure AI Foundry, and if you all go to the Azure AI Foundry right now, this is what you're going to see. This is the assistance playground. And a little later, I'm going to show you what it's going to look like in the very near future. But this is what it looks like today. And I'm going to make it do something here. Now, here's how all agents work like this. You give them instructions, and I've given it these basic instructions over here. And you give them powers, and they figure out how to accomplish a task with the powers that you give it. Now, the power that I've given this one is indeed Code Interpreter. And let's just fire it up here, and I'm going to let it do some data analysis. Now, this can take some time, because an agent is a framework that sits above one or more models that allow you to do complex and long-running operations, and, as you'll see in a little while, that can take actions on your behalf. But now, Code Interpreter is doing the first of those things. It's doing a long-running complex operation. And what you can see here, if I can get it to sit still for a second, I'll actually move to the one that I made earlier, is that it is writing code, and here's some Python code that it wrote, and it's executing its own code. Now, I will readily admit that the task I gave it, although it seems simple, is really quite complicated. So I said, using this Excel file that I gave it, make a table of the top 10 buyers by quantity across all 3 years, 2017 to 2019. This is what the spreadsheet looks like. And it's not that easy, because in 2017, we have this quantity column in here. This is based on a real event that I used to run in San Francisco, by the way. 2018, I switched to Universe. And Universe doesn't have a quantity column. So you see two Aria Ramirez's here. This is not real people's data, of course. But that's because each row is one ticket, and that's also true of 2019. So this is more like a real Excel spreadsheet. Nobody has clean data in Excel spreadsheets or databases ever. Now, if we go back over here, oh my word, it has made a mistake. 8,000. Now, we didn't sell more than 1,000 tickets in total on any given year. We definitely didn't sell 8,939. So I'm going to have to correct it. And this highlights a key point about this. I did this intentionally. This is not a demo fail. This is an intentional fail. I do this on purpose. So I'm going to give it a hint now. I'm going to say, that doesn't look right. 2017 has a quantity column, and 2018 and 2019, each row is one ticket. And you know, it's good to be polite to your agents. Please recalculate. Now it's going to recalculate, and I did that earlier. I'm not going to belabor this. So I did do this earlier. It made a different mistake earlier, where it only tabulated, I think, 1 year of data. It made a mistake. I told it it made that mistake. Again, I was polite. Please, always say please.
Maybe you shouldn't be polite.
It's the magic word. And I'm hoping this renders on the screen. For some reason, it's not rendering. It did actually ultimately get the right answer, which I verified by literally making a bunch of pivot tables and adding this together myself. So for some reason, this doesn't want to show on the screen now, but maybe this one has recalculated it. And it did. And it got the right answer the second time.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So it can do complex and long-running data analysis, but you as a human, you better keep your eye on it because it will make mistakes. Mads, back to you.
Awesome. And you mentioned this maker-checker pattern.
Yeah, now,
right?
And that's one way that you can mitigate this, which we'll get into a little bit later again also, is that one way you can mitigate these mistakes is to create a second agent or a set of agents that check the first one.
Exactly.
True.
Exactly. Alrighty, so we come back to our diagram on the side screens over here. If I asked y'all, I'm not going to do it, how many of y'all are actually using AutoGen with the Assistance API? Very few people would probably raise their hands. And what we learn as we actually talk to customers is there's this theme of why folks aren't moving to this new world. They basically say, hey, I'm an enterprise customer. I don't want to use an SDK for research. I'm an enterprise customer. I don't want to use a service that doesn't act like the rest of my Azure services. I want to be able to bring my own data. I want to be able to lock it down with intra IDs and authentication and authorization. I want to connect with the rest of my Microsoft services. What we kept hearing from folks is customers needed an enterprise-grade solution before they actually implemented a multi-agent framework. People aren't necessarily blocked right now on the models. The models are pretty capable now. They're blocked on the enterprise foundational pieces. And that's why we in Azure are super excited to be announcing this week Azure AI Agent Service, the service to deploy and scale your AI agents. Now, we're going to talk about this throughout the rest of this session, so I'm not going to belabor it, but I will demystify a bit of what Azure AI Agent Service is. Well, at the Ask the Expert booth, people kept asking me, oh, is this a replacement to AutoGen? No. This is taking one of those agents powered by the Assistance API, and sprinkling on some enterprise goodness. Security, connections, non-OpenAI models, and most importantly, making it really fast for you to build one of these agents so that you're spending days or weeks on it instead of months. And we want to be able to do this for you so that it's faster to use tools like AutoGen. Because our dream for all of you, our vision, is for you to make your company, and more importantly, your own employees, more productive. Right? I used to be a UX researcher back in the day. I used to make these process diagrams for a living. And we would get so excited when we found a step that we could automate with an API at the very bottom or an app. But once we were done, we'd improve efficiency by like a couple of percentage points. Because most of these steps are manual. People have to do them. But with the promise of AI, these LLMs, these agents, you can start automating these specific steps. In the next couple of years, you're not going to have an agent called the HR manager agent that's going to automate someone's job away. That's just unrealistic. These AIs are not that capable. But what you are going to be able to have is an AI that can send a personalized email, an agent that can answer questions, or an agent that can structure some data from a conversation it has with a user. And that leaves your humans, your employees, to do better things, like just handle approvals, or become managers themselves of these fleet of agents that make their lives more productive, so that they can 10x what they used to do. But we cannot have this wonderful future without that enterprise foundation. And it starts with security. I joke, the only thing at Microsoft that's probably more important than AI right now is security. So, of course, there's tracing and monitoring to see what these agents are doing, content filters to make sure that they're not doing anything nefarious. I'm particularly proud of my team's efforts on bring your own storage and bring your own search index. It allows you as a customer to own your data and to control it the way you want it to. And then the last one, on behalf of auth support. These agentic systems, you need to ultimately lock it down and make sure that when it gives information to a user, it's only giving the information that user has access to, and we're baking it natively inside of Azure AI Agent Service. But we didn't stop at just security. We improved the reliability and the performance, the quality. And the thing that most folks forget when they think about enterprise is enterprise connectivity. And so for this next section, I'm actually going to be inviting Brian up to the stage. Everyone give a round of applause.
How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not going to introduce what team you're on because that would ruin the surprise.
Okay, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So why don't you announce one of the first enterprise connectivity tools coming to Azure AI Agent Service?
All right. So thanks, man. As we all know, even the most advanced models, with all of its great reasoning power, is still limited in terms of the knowledge that it has based on the information that was used to train it. So many industries need real-time information so that they can make key decisions for themselves and their customers. And that's why I'm really, really excited to announce that grounding with Bing Search is one of the first knowledge tools that will be available in Azure AI Agent Service.
Woohoo! Yeah, I really love this thing because you can bring in this public data. Can you tell me a bit more how it works and maybe some scenarios?
Yeah, absolutely. So developers will be able to connect their applications and models to a rich set of information that's available on the web today and be able to use that in real time. In fact, it's probably best if I show you with the demo. So let's move to that. So if you look here, and imagine a travel company that's investigating whether or not there are any disruptions in travel for their customers that are going to France at the end of November, December. The model queries, doesn't know this information itself, so it queries the grounding with Bing Search connector, and it brings back a series of information. And you can see there that now we have the information that, yes, there are some rail strikes that are going to happen in the next few days and maybe again in December. And there are some links at the bottom, so I can go and I can read more and I can verify that myself.
That's great. That's so much information that the AI can now use to answer questions. It had to be hard, right? It had to be difficult to add this to the Azure AI Agent Service.
Actually, it's really, really easy. All the developer needs to do is go into the knowledge tool set and select grounding with Bing Search, and that will be automatically applied to your model. And when your model knows it doesn't know something, it'll have that ability to go and retrieve that real-time information.
Perfect. It's almost as easy, or just as easy as Copilot Studio. Wow. We didn't stop at just Bing, though.
Nope.
We also added some other places to retrieve data. For your corporate data, we have SharePoint coming. I'm sure you have some documents that you'd love to be able to search and find.
Only a few billion of them, yeah.
Yes. Fabric for your structured data for analysis of trends. You can give that to your AI agent. And of course, Azure AI Search. So if you have documents, I know
an elastic database.
Elastic database. You might have a bunch of documents there. You can pull that into Azure AI Search and allow the agent to talk over it. And we're not stopping at just Microsoft. We're also working with other APIs like TripAdvisor in order to bring agent information that it can do to answer questions or potentially even do more, right?
Yeah.
And what I like to call out on this slide is the AI agent in the demos that we've been preparing aren't just talking or retrieving information from one source, 2, 3. They're pulling from all of them. And so you can actually have really complex queries that you can give to the AI, and it's smart enough to choose the right tool, search the right way with that tool, pull that information from multiple sources, and provide you a summarized information back.
That's fantastic.
It's great. But that's not all. You want to be able to actually use this information to do something, to drive productivity. I know all of us have kind of gotten a bit tired of chatbots. With the other automation tools that we're introducing, like Logic Apps, APIs with OpenAPI 3.0, and Azure Functions, you can take the knowledge that is retrieved from these knowledge sources and power actual real work, productivity with your agents.
Really powerful.
Alrighty. Well, enough of us talking. I'd love for us to see these things in action, in particular, the Bing tool.
I am raring to go. All right, here we go.
right.
You ready?
Thank you.
Now, I did promise you all that I was going to show you what this thing is about to look like. And so here we are again in the Azure AI Foundry. And earlier, I was in the assistants playground, but now I am in the agents playground. And now this is what it's going to look like tomorrow. By tomorrow, I mean in a few weeks, I think. Anyway, now check this out. I am actually going to build this agent live in front of your eyes and really, really hope that it works. So I am building myself a scheduler agent. And as before, I'm going to give it some instructions. You are a scheduler agent that makes bookings in an Outlook calendar. So I'm not just asking questions anymore. And in general, when you think about agents, think past just question answering. Think past just RAG. Think about taking action that this one is going to do. It's going to actually make a thing in my Outlook. Cross your fingers. All right, now, to do this, though, now, notice what the task is that I'm giving it. I'm going to say, well, first I'm going to start with an easy one. So I'm just going to use the Bing thing. So let's add some knowledge. So this is what Mads was talking about here. We got Azure AI Search, we got Fabric, we got Bing, which I'm going to add, SharePoint files, and TripAdvisor. But I don't have any Trip to Advise here, so I'm going to go ahead and add my Bing search over here. And with that, as soon as it's added, I should be able to ask this question to get a reasonable response. Now, I come from Piedmont, California. And while we're waiting for our response, oh, well, there it goes. It is indeed searching Bing. And what it should find is April 7th through the 11th. Let's check that against the official school calendar. Here it is. And lo and behold, it is indeed April 7th through the 11th. So thank you very much, Bing. But that's not good enough, because now I would like it to take some action. Now, you should be aware that there are a number of different ways that I could do this. In fact, I have already written this up in code. I can do this in a totally pro-code manner. I've written this exact same type of agent in Python before. But here, and in part because this is a stage demo, and in part because I want to show you some cool stuff, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. So, as Mads mentioned, there are a number of ways that you can connect this to actions. I can connect it to an API that identifies with the OpenAPI spec, and it will just call that. I can make my own custom function. I can call an Azure function, but here I'm going to call an Azure Logic App. This is my Logic App. And the cool thing about Logic Apps is, well, it is this block diagram programming language that's built into Azure. Lots of people don't even know this exists. And check this out. Now, it's got these blocks that are predefined for things like create an event in Outlook. So rather than wrangling with the Graph API like I did when I coded this, when I made the Logic app, I just said create event, and it creates the event. Now, you know, there's other stuff I could be doing with this, right? I can, like, do something in SAP over here. I could do something in Salesforce or, you know, Dynamics. There's all kinds of integrations that are built right into this thing, into this Logic app. But right now, I'm going to use this one right here, which is creating an event in Outlook. So I'm going to connect it like so. Let's clear this guy out. And here we go. I'm going to say, block off my Outlook calendar for the Piedmont, California School Spring Break 2025. Now, what this should kick off, and by the way, let's take a look at my calendar as it is right now. Nothing on it. It's blank for April 2025. I will now, okay, so it's found it, again, April 7th through the 11th. Do I have your permission to proceed? And it's important to have a human in the loop when you do this stuff, right? So before it makes the thing, check with me first. I specifically instructed it to do that. So check with me, and now I say proceed. It is now, presumably, calling the Logic app, and lo and behold, I think my calendar's in the wrong time zone, but lo and behold, it has indeed taken this action on my behalf. It has made the calendar entry. And this is the power of agents. It's not just about RAG. It's not just about question answering. It's about using that reasoning. Now, RAG is part of it. It did RAG itself, in this case, to Bing, or I could have linked it to Fabric or to files or whatever. I could have linked it to all manner of things, but I did that in the service of this agent taking action. That's where the real power comes in. And that is our demo, which, notwithstanding the time zone thing, totally worked. All right, Mads, come on back out.
That was great. You know, whenever you're dealing with AI demos, you're crossing your fingers in the backstage, like, please don't do it.
Especially when it's tomorrow's functionality. You know?
Yeah. Which is a good segue to what is all going to be included as part of the Azure AI Agent Service. So this is a good kind of recap at this point. We already kind of covered the first pillar, all these enterprise kind of guarantees, being able to bring in your own file storage, that OBO support, observability. You also have all those tools we mentioned. I'm not going to list them ad nauseum again, but you have your knowledge and your actions. And I briefly mentioned it, but what's really great about the agent service over the Assistance API is it also supports non-OpenAI models from the Microsoft Models as Service catalog. So we're shipping, when we go public preview later in December, with 𝗦𝗲𝘀, Mistral, Cohere, but our goal is to support any model that supports function calling with Azure AI agents. All of these things together basically is creating that enterprise agent service, which is the plus of what you may be using today with the Assistance API. A ton of customers are already trying our private preview and giving us feedback so that we do public preview later in December. You all have a quality experience that you can try out during all of your winter breaks. So I'm all excited about all the things y'all can hack while you are chilling with some hot cocoa wherever you might be staying. Now, if we go back to that original diagram, I changed it a little bit. So instead of it saying the Assistance API, it now says Agent Service. Right? We now have enterprise agents as these leaf nodes. But if you remember, a lot of enterprise customers of ours still have reservations of using an SDK like Autogen that is for research. So what is Microsoft's goal trying to be when we enable y'all to do these multi-agent workflows? Well, I'm going to do a slight kind of talk on what our strategy is across our ecosystem of open source SDKs and Azure AI Foundry. On the left here, we have Autogen, which we saw earlier at the beginning of our demo. It is, again, that research SDK that is built by Microsoft Research and is always going to be cutting edge. The benefits of that is if you use it as a customer, you're always going to be using the latest research and showing what all is possible with agents. But the Autogen team is really good at completely changing everything and having those breaking changes. And that's by design, because they don't want to be limited by what has been before. And that is where Semantic Kernel comes in, that nice little blue and pink logo, which is kind of our scale motion. They take the research that comes from Microsoft Research, from Autogen, and they bake it in, and they keep baking until they can actually GA it. They can make commitments to all of you that they aren't going to have breaking changes. And what they've been doing over the last year is taking in the concepts like group chats or processes and adding them to that framework so that all of you have an enterprise reliable SDK that you can use that still does all of the cool stuff that Autogen has. And then as it kind of progresses, we'll take those same bits of goodness that Autogen and Semantic Kernel has and bake it into the Azure AI Foundry. So you can kind of imagine where we're going to be taking agents in the future. And I hope this, for those of you that have always asked, like, oh, is Semantic Kernel going away? Is Autogen being deprecated? Like, what's happening with these different SDKs? They're all sticking around. They're all staying, right? Because they all have a particular place to support all of your very different needs. Now, we'd love for you to all use agents within Azure AI Foundry as that scalable enterprise solution. But depending on if you need to be cutting edge or stable, you can either choose one of Microsoft's really great open source SDKs, Autogen, state-of-the-art research SDK, or Semantic Kernel, the production-ready and stable SDK, which is supported in Python, C#, and Java. So with that, I'm now going to pass it back so that we can actually see this multi-agent stuff in action.
Let's do this. All right, here we go. Now, this is a sort of a bespoke .NET app that I wrote for myself. And I will tell you in advance that this is not exactly a demo. Part of my job at Microsoft is, well, all the questionnaires about AI come to me. So if it's an RFP or an analyst questionnaire, or whatever it is, if it has to do with AI, they all get routed to me. And so I decided to make for myself a little AI-enabled process to answer these questionnaires, which I will now use. And I am hoping right now to provoke an argument. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to ask, does your service offer video generative AI? Let's see what we get over here. Can I provoke an argument? Now, did not get an argument. That's okay. I made it argue earlier, so I'll show you the earlier argument. Actually, I will bring it up right now. I like to use this question because it does have a tendency to provoke the argument that I'm looking for. Because right now, Azure AI does not yet have any video generative AI. That is generative AI that literally generates videos. There are, as you know, some in research, but we don't presently offer them in Azure AI. Anyway, this is a concrete example of a maker-checker pattern. This is what Lambert and I were talking about earlier. And in this case, so I've asked it this question. Now, I have 4 agents in here. And these first 3 are powered by Bing, in fact. So they all have the ability to search Bing. The first one is the question answerer agent. And so the question answerer agent puts together an answer for this. The second one is the answer checker agent. So its job is to check the first one. And bear in mind that when you make a multi-agent system, each agent can actually be associated with a different model. So you could use GPT-4o for the first one and Llama for the second one if you want to. And they can each have different powers, as with some of Lambert's agents. Like some of his agents can query that data source, some others can query that other data source. So now, I got my question answer agent. I got my answer checker agent, which in this case felt that the answer is incorrect. When I first started doing this, I soon discovered, now a lot of these questionnaires require publicly accessible documentation. And I discovered that there were times that my question answer agent would make up links. These links would look like totally syntactically correct HTTP links, and they were false. If you clicked on them, there was nothing. You get a 404. So I made a link checker agent. And the link checker agent also checks just the links in here. And finally, we have our manager agent. And our manager agent oversees the process here. So if either the answer checker or the link checker agent report an incorrect, the manager agent can reject it. If it does, that kicks off a rewrite cycle. And I would note that I wrote this whole thing in semantic kernel. And I'll give you a real quick look at that later. But that reject causes a rewrite cycle. Now, the question answer agent, when it goes to rewrite, can see what came above it. So it has a history of what came before. And it's like, OK, let me try that again. And I'm going to do it differently this time. It rewrites it this time. Answer checker agent likes it. Link checker agent likes it. And the manager agent approves it. Now, if I connected this to an Excel doc, which I can also do, I can literally answer an entire questionnaire all in one shot. If I wanted to, then the final approved answer is what would be written to the Excel doc, and still, I read them all. There is no way that I'm going to give this response verbatim to anybody who's giving these questionnaires. There always has to be a human in the loop. So, now, while this thing, and the reason I even made this system is because originally I only had the question answer agent, and it often either hallucinated or just gave the wrong answer in some fashion. And that was annoying to me because it took me a bunch of time to fix it. So this saves me a bunch of time. Nonetheless, I always have to review it. And I did say I would show you where this is coming from. Well, you could try this too. It is live on GitHub. I do not guarantee that my code is good. It sometimes crashes. Sometimes these agents go off the rails. This is not production-grade code, although what I do guarantee is that I use this thing myself at least once a week. So at least for me, it works pretty well, and it can kind of get you started also on how to make a multi-agent system with semantic kernel.
Like how much, clap, yes, please. Like how much time did you spend beforehand, like before you created all the system filling out these questionnaires?
Oh my God. I mean, what I used to do actually, so, we have the whole Azure AI team, and I used to take these questionnaires, and sometimes these questionnaires have over 100 questions. Like I got one, 136 questions, right? And I would distribute it all to the team, and then I'd have to be like a project manager. I'd be like, hey, did you finish your question? Did you finish your question? All this stuff, right? And then I started, as I said, I started using a single agent, right? Just a single, like, go look it up on Bing and give me the answer. And that saved me some of the time. But now, ever since I made this, now it happened that I was in Paris relatively recently, a couple of weeks ago, and I got one of these questionnaires. And it was, I don't know, it was a bunch of questions. I did the whole thing in the Paris airport lounge in an hour and a half. So I generated all the stuff. I went through the whole thing, checked all the things, fixed the ones that were, in some fashion I didn't like them, and boom, I was done. I didn't have to bother any member of my team. I got it done. The guys who submitted the questionnaire were happy because it was done. So yeah, it saved me a ton of time.
And I love this example because you start off as a single agent where the human has to do all this back and forth chat. I highly encourage all of you, try to find a way to get away from the input chatbot, right? You want to drive this through actual automation. In your case, upload an Excel file, right?
Totally. Yeah, and that's one thing I didn't really go into earlier. Like, even if we go back to the scheduler agent, where I would go with this next, if you think about the scheduler agent, now I activated this with a chatbot,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But now how cool would it be if instead of a chatbot, I mean, because this is the thing about automated agents, think beyond the chatbot. What if I made it so that I have it set to my email? And if you email me and you're like, hey, can you meet on Friday at 3 p.m., my agent wakes up. And maybe I give it the power to look up in Outlook too, so it doesn't make a conflict. But my agent wakes up, looks up in Outlook. Am I free at 3 p.m.? Yes. Okay, create an event and email you back and be like, yeah, let's meet Friday 3 p.m. That's what we can do now. We can make these automated. This is the automated agents that Satya talks about in the keynote. When he says automated agents, it's really just an agent that's triggered by something else.
Yes.
Something other than a chatbot.
And because this is Azure, we didn't show too much, we didn't really show any code in this particular demo, but behind the scenes, these are Azure AI services as part of Azure AI Foundry. There's the Azure AI Foundry SDK, and you can write code that creates all these agents, runs them, invokes them, and most importantly, to the automated agents kind of concept, you can trigger them with webhooks or logic apps or Azure Functions, whatever it might be. You can now write the code that has these agents perform real work for you in the background.
That's right. Now, before we go, I do want to let you all in on one little secret, a little secret that's going to make you say, oh. 𝗏1. 𝗏1, well, you think of 𝗏1, you might know about the 𝗏1 preview model. It's not exactly a model. Actually, 𝗏1 is an agent framework. And I have made it do some cool stuff here, which I am not really going to talk about because we have a whole session on this, BRK102, which I have no memory when it is, but it's on Thursday. So somewhere in this speaker port, here it is.
I found it.
9:45 a.m., myself and Jennifer Marsman, we had the good fortune to be some of the first people at Microsoft to touch this model. We had a good time with it. 9:45 a.m. in the room adjacent to this one. Come join us for a deeper discussion of 𝗏1, which is actually an agent framework in its own right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all the demos. Thank you, Brian, for sharing with us the new Bing tools and all the other tools. I hope all of you are excited to use the new Azure AI Agent Service. It's in private preview right now, and it'll be going public in December. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.